What is happening, everybody? Fantastic Saturday night. If you're watching this, your Saturday didn't quite go the way that you had expected it to. Anyway, hope everybody's having an awesome evening. Basically, kind of just hanging out tonight. Hanging out with the wife. We're watching a movie. And now I'm hanging out with you. So, cheers. Whatever beverage you happen to have on you. So, one of the things I was going to talk about, I get a lot of questions, or I have been getting some questions, I should say, that were revolving around the truck, the cars, things like that. What's up, TU? What's going on, man? So I figured I would start off by giving you guys some updates on the different cars that I'm working on. So right now, a Speed Freak 10. I like it. Got arm flexes. Cool. Yeah, speaking of arm flexes, so yeah, let's reverse back to that. So some of y'all have asked me about what's been going on with the gym since COVID and all this other kind of stuff. So yeah, it's still working out, still training-ish. But you know how it is. You always have a habit of getting back into it. You get a little bit too stupid. I'm pretty dumb when it comes to stuff like that. So nursing a partially jacked up shoulder and a messed up thumb. So anyway, that's the latest with that, if nothing else. But some updates on the cars. So who to start with? Let's start with the truck. So Sierra is the 72 3/4 ton. That's kind of a near and dear project to my heart. That's the one, if you follow my Instagram page, you've seen me bleeding all over that truck. So updates, it's got the front brake lines. I've done that. I've done all of the hard lines, basically replumbed the entire truck. And that was a real treat, let me tell you about it. But, as car guys, and if you're working on one of these older cars, it's a lesson to you. If you're looking for something old to work on, say you got the itch for a shoebox Chevy truck, the boxy Chevys. Maybe you're into the 60s or 70s trucks, cars, things like that. Guys, you got to remember, these things are getting really long in the tooth, especially when we're talking about these systems as a whole, braking system, cooling system, things like that. You got to look into those types of things. And so as I've been working on the truck, oddly enough, things have been failing on it. Imagine that. So if you don't know the story behind the brake lines on the truck, I was doing motor mounts. I bought some of the tubular motor mounts, or at least the motor mount supports, and then it converted it over to car style motor mounts. In the process of doing that, one of the brake lines broke. Still have no idea how it did it, but it was the right front brake line. That was a treat. Replaced those brake lines only to, as I'm getting ready to bleed the brakes, blew a rear brake line just sitting there in the driveway. Anyway, so I had to replumb the entire system. To give you guys an idea, though, that's something that you're going to have to be looking at if you're going into or if you're going to start looking into some of these older cars if you want to fix them up. It's not just the sexy parts of it. That's kind of the point that I'm trying to make here. You're looking at issues that are really more along the lines of the not sexy stuff. Again, brakes. You're looking at... hold on a second. Man, what the... South Park blasting in the background. Anyway, as I was saying, there's stuff that you got to budget for, and the budget isn't just money, it's time. But we're talking motor mounts, in my truck's case, motor mounts, cab mounts. In fact, let me show you what I was up against with the truck. Hang on a second, you're going to dig this. So y'all may have seen me go through this stuff before, but if you have, bear with me, and you haven't, well, here you go. So these are some of the bolts. Yeah, it's not supposed to dip down like that. There you go. These are the rear cab mount bolts. And as you can see, they're basically gone. They're more or less perished. In fact, after I got the first one out, I was freaking out as far as getting this one out. I didn't think this one would ever come out. Anyway, stuff like that you got to think about. These are machines made out of metal, and metal corrodes. You don't want your truck cab flying off your chassis. So anyway, you'll run into stuff like that too. That's one of the rear cab mounts that luckily just basically flew apart when I was taking it off. That would have been a real pain in the ass to try to, well, anyway, the new mounts are a little bit different. They've got a shorter stud here. But yeah, that stuff just completely falls apart. So you got to know that that's stuff you're going to be replacing, along with brake lines and electrical parts and all that other stuff. In other words, what I'm saying is working on old shit ain't sexy. You know, it looks cool and there's a certain style to it that you're just never going to find again. But the reality is that it's just not as, well, it's not as glamorous as some of the TV shows you may watch will make it out to be. So I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, so the truck's coming along pretty good. Yeah, the motor's tired, definitely needs a rebuild, but fires up and drives just fine. Some blow by, but doesn't smoke, so that's a good sign. But it'll be going to the shop, over to a Dr. Diff's shop here probably within the next, I would say 2 to 3 weeks, give or take. So as soon as I get the green light, truck's going to be sent over there. It's going to have the new transmission put in, the new leaf springs put in, and from there, just drive the thing around, cruise the thing around. I love driving that truck, puts a huge smile on my face. So because of that, not really trying to make a race car out of it, but you know, eventually it'll be a little bit more perky than it is now. But for now, it's just going to be a fun, and man, it sounds good with that new exhaust. So what's next? Well, the Camaro. So Camaro may have taken a little bit of a back seat to the truck here recently, but dash is about to come out of it. There's going to be quite a bit of work on that Camaro here in a real short amount of time, but the dash is going to come out. I got to send that thing off to get rewired, whatever kind of voodoo they're going to do there, and put a new set of tires on it. But I did drive it the other night. In fact, it was Tuesday night. I think it was Tuesday night. Anyway, between that and tightening up the steering a little bit, that's going to be about the end of that thing for a little bit. The car runs great, and I'll tell you something, there's nothing more fun than driving that car after you drive something like this, because with electronic throttles, you don't get that initial hit like you do with a mechanical throttle. It's one of those weird things that you really can't put into words, but if you drive a vehicle with a mechanical throttle, well, think of it like this. When the throttle is closed, you have, let's call it, 1% of your throttle is really open when it's closed. But if you give it a quarter of the throttle, it goes from that 1% to 25%. And that's a big jump, from 25% to, say, half throttle. Initial hit has already taken place. So they always feel like they're a lot more torquey. And so it's weird. I'll drive the Camaro and I drive this thing, and it's like, damn, dude, the Camaro is punchier than the Hellcat. And realistically, just underfoot. Now, we're not talking about dyno numbers or any other BS, but yeah, just underfoot, it kind of is technically more punchy. So, I don't know. It's just kind of fun when you, when you have the different driving experiences that you're playing with. Last car that I'll give you guys a heads up on, and if you've got questions about the Hellcat, I can answer those along the way, but is, well, the Fox body. That's right. The black car is coming back home fairly soon. I am waiting on a radiator from Fluidine, and as soon as that thing makes it to the party, then I'm going to have that installed. I'll bring the car back probably over here as opposed to the car barn, and I'm going to get started on working on the paint, getting the paint corrected, and basically bringing the car back to back to life, so to speak. Trying to bring it up to bring it up to spec. Okay, so we're talking belts, hoses, we're talking bleeding the brakes, every fluid getting changed, basically giving the old girl a once over. And if you're not aware of what's going on, I've got an opportunity to get my original very first Fox body Mustang back, and that's the car that I learned how to do all this dumb stuff that I know how to do now. I learned by practicing on that car. And so I've got to believe it. Okay, so I'll be tuning that car with CalCon and CalEdit software, which is kind of funny because I haven't even thought about trying to tune CalCon and CalEdit for decades, maybe. I haven't even thought of it. But I'm going to have to brush up my skill set on CalCon, CalEdit, bust up the old LM2 innovative wideband, and get to work. So yeah, that'll be what's next. So be on the lookout for that rig. I don't know when specifically that's going to be, but it's on the way. So kind of cool stuff. You'll get to see, 25th anniversary Camaro Rally Sport, 25th anniversary 5-liter Mustang, which is now a 351 car. And then of course Sierra, which is, I don't know, that thing just puts a big dumb grin on my face. Not even going more than 50 or 60 miles an hour, just cruising with it. So anyway, let me check in with you guys real quick, see what y'all are up to. TU is checking in again, saying, yeah, buddy, what's up, Speed Freak? What's happening, brother? I'd say, really, you're kidding? Saying, love this guy. Thanks, man. I love you too, brother. William saying, good evening, B, from Northern California. NorCal in the house, man, my adopted hometown. Or my adopted home state. In my adopted hometown is San Francisco and San Bruno and San Mateo and all places in between, man. Good looking out for all my NorCal peeps. Mike Cole Young checking in and saying, good evening, Professor Mason. Got the arm flex. I like it. Slime Cuda got the 2 thumbs up. Edward Schaefer's got a face. Whoa, hey, what happened there? A face. Jesus Christ, don't ever do that again. What the fuck is going on with this thing? CFL James, hey, CFL's checking in and saying, good evening. Got the arm flex. I like it. Pete's saying, what's up, B Mason? New to your channel. Racer X told me about you. What's up, Pete? Hope everything's going well for you, man. Yeah, tell Racer X I said, what's up? Nick's checking in saying, what's up, man? I get no love at car shows with my 6'1". Any advice? Yeah, tell them all to eat a bag of look, here's what you'd say. Look, the 6'1", actually, for if you're a hardcore Mopar enthusiast, man, hold on a second. Did the thing just flake out again? What the fuck is, anyway, look, sorry, it's getting me this kind of zoom thing. I don't know if it's coming up on y'all's end. Look, the 6'1" is, for a lot of guys, especially the Mopar, if you want to call them the purist, yeah, it's not a real Hemi. It's better than a real Hemi. Thank God it's not a real Hemi. But it is the introduction, it is the reintroduction, I should say, of Mopar performance to the masses. And look, it brings to the masses the iconic 4 1/4 horse number. It's got the Hemi nameplate. It's got a great pedigree behind it in that it is kind of the LS version of a Hemi. You can do some hot rod things to that car and they do great. You want to throw a blower on it? Fine. You want to put cam intake work on it, head work, exhaust, whatever, they always respond well. So yeah, if they don't know, listen, man, it's their own ignorance if they don't get it. To be honest with you, I've got a big soft spot in my heart for the 6'1s. When I really started getting back into Mopar, and I don't mean with the Viper stuff, I mean with the like the Challenger, the Charger, things like that. The very first Challenger I ever saw, the one that I fell in love with, was I think it was an 09. Was it an 09? 08 or 09 Challenger. I was living in Dallas at the time, right before I moved to California. And it was an SRT8 automatic car, black with I guess it was like the carbon stripes or something like that, lowered on CCW wheels. I'll never forget what the car looked like. And to this day, I mean, if I'm here to tell you, that car to me reignited my excitement for Mopar in a lot of different ways. And so, hold that thought. Torque wants to make an entrance. What are you doing? Come on, buddy. There you go. There he is. All right. Anyway, that car, my interest in Mopar. So, and when that car came out, I mean, it really was the top dog, if you will, of the American muscle cars at the time. Hey, love you, my buddy. We went and got ice cream today, so he's in a really good mood. Yeah, you are. Yes, you are. Yeah, Torquey. Anyway, so that's what I would tell him. All right, bud, go hang out. Really's asking thoughts on a Kenny Bell on a 5.7. I prefer the E-Force kit over the Kenny Bell. I like the Kenny Bell, but they're a little bit less efficient than the Maggie that's on the what's included on the E-Force kit. And the E-Force kit I think is a little bit more complete, and to me it's a cleaner looking kit. So that's the direction I would go. But like, all bullshit aside, that Kenny Bell is going to sound amazing. So just know that coming into it. Hang on just a second here. Sean, he's checking in, saying Hellcat driver weight savings project, 21 pounds so far. Hey, listen, everybody give pounds to Shawnee. My boy is on a weight loss program. He is it's basically pounds for tenths on his side. So so everybody, cheers to Sean on his continued success with his weight loss program. I like it, brother. Keep it up, man. Chasing Cars is asking, another Mopar channel said the TRX will counterpunch the Raptor. Pretty sure in boxing, if you wait 11 years to counter your opponent, you'll lose. Brother, you wait 11 nanoseconds to counter, you're going to get caught. So the Raptor or the TRX is going to counterpunch the Raptor. Really? When? When's it going to happen? Why wasn't it revealed? Why did we get a super stock instead of a TRX? Why don't we have a 392 option for the trucks, for that matter? Have a real, like big block RT super stock truck, something like that. Why the TRX? Why is the TRX such a thing? Leading up to this, you wouldn't have had to, and still don't have to run the Hellcat platform to be competitive in that market. It's just, anyway. Again, hi, FCA. My name is Brian Mason. I've been in and around the automotive and basically motorsports community my entire life. Check me out on LinkedIn. You get the idea. Like, the whole thing of this is like there are opportunities being lost at a breathtaking rate on the part of FCA, Dodge, whatever you want to call it, Ram in this case. Yeah, kind of wondering when they're going to get on the ball with that, but we'll see how it pans out. Problem is that now they've got a brand of Raptor that they're going to be going up against. And for me, man, that's going to be one of the hardest cliffs to crest. And think of it like this, too. The Ford, man, it's not a bad place to do business, bro. If you haven't seen one of these trucks, they're nice. And anyway, without getting too gushy over the Raptor, let me just tell you that they're nice enough trucks to where they pretty much set the standard for that, desert runner, jumpy, brutish type of a vehicle. Dodge has got the power plants in their arsenal. They have just yet to do anything with them. And again, like you say, 11 years is a little too long, but I mean, at this point, they had the opportunity to do this back in 2015. I mean, granted, yeah, that's 5 years ago, but 6 model years, and they had the opportunity to do it then, and they didn't do it then. So, I don't know. Kind of makes you wonder. Hey, John D's checking in. MSHS pre-race party. I like it. So everybody, I say, what up? What is happening, everybody? Preston Olivet saying, can the 6.1 handle boost? Yes, it can handle boost. The problem, though, with the 6.1 or any of the LS variants or the Ford variant, whatever, the issue here is not can the engine handle boost. It's can the engine handle boost given the fuel quality that you have in your particular area, and at what altitude are we talking about? What density altitudes are we talking about? This engine can handle boost fantastically, but even with some minor tweaks to the tune, you can make it dangerously close to having an issue based on fuel quality. Again, are you in an area that has 91 octane? Do you have 93 octane? Are you running E85 in this contraption when you build it? Race gas? All of these questions have to be answered. So the short answer to it is yes. The long answer to it is, well, depending on how much boost you're going to run, what type of weight you're going to be running at, how are you going to be driving the car? Are you going to be doing mile events where you're under very high cylinder pressure, generating a ton of heat for a long period of time? Are we talking about just screwing around on the street where you're just kind of playing with it, like blast the thing up to about 100 miles an hour and call it good? And everything in between. Hold on, let me take a breath. I think you know where I'm going with it. So, yeah, with every caveat you can imagine, build something that's going to be fun, but don't necessarily throw the kitchen sink at it. And when in doubt, ring gap. Okay, guys, look, y'all know the formula. If you haven't heard me talk about ring gap, that's what pops on 392 cars. They've got a shallow ring land, and the ring gaps are very tight from the factory. That's two things that work fantastically for an NA combination, makes them very efficient. But when you start adding real high temperatures, that's when things get messed up. That ring gap closes, the ring pinches, turns, and that's what pops that ring land. So open the ring up, and the ring will have more room to move around in that ring land, and you're not gonna have the problem that you would have. So what does that require? A tear down. So nobody wants to hear that. In fact, everybody hates that. But every time you watch a video of somebody making hella power on an LS combination, it's it's stock pistons, stock rings. Yeah, it's stock rings that have been opened up, bruh. So just know that going into it, man. You're not being told a lie, but it's a lie by omission. And of course, you know, most of the vehicles that LSs are in are pretty easy. Especially in a vet, you can do this stuff with the engine in the car, just remove stuff. So, you know, again, I caution you, if somebody says it can't handle boost, that's not necessarily accurate, but there's a lot of caveats that can lead up to, well, the MDE standards of use, misuse, and abuse. It'll stand up to use, probably won't stand up to misuse, and abuse it'll blow up if you don't do it the right way. But that's all of them. That's LS, Coyote, SBC, SBF. All of them are the same way. You just have to know that there's going to be some things as the engine builder that you're going to have to do to get that to give that engine the best opportunity that it has, given the type of induction that you're going to run. And by the way, sorry, to get to the formula, for basically it's 1,000th for every, or 6,000ths for every inch. Is kind of a safe bet. If you're going to be running a lot of boost, then go to 7,000ths for every inch of bore. So in other words, if you're going to be running a moderate amount of boost on an engine with 4 inches of bore, you'd be looking at 24 thousandths of ring gap. That'd be your kind of like what you would run in a 5.7. 23, 25 thousandths. That would kind of get you where you need to be with those engines, and you can just kind of math that through. It's pretty simple deal. Antoine, am I saying that right? I hope I'm saying that right. Cool name though. Saying, tell us all about NSR cams. Well, shit. Okay, look, here's the thing. I don't believe that there's any such thing as an NSR cam. What he's talking about is no spring required cams. I don't believe in that. There's several reasons. One, you're probably, unless you have a manual transmission car or you've got a Hellcat, you're going to be swapping out lifters anyway. And to do that, the heads have to come off. If the heads are coming off, you might as well go ahead, pull the springs out, put a good set of springs in it, because you need to have better push rods as well. So let me walk you through what my mentality is with camshafts when it comes to spring pressures and things like that. Whenever I set up a cam, whenever I put a cam together, basically the cam pack that I'm looking for, the spring pressures I'm looking for, somewhere around 420 pounds-ish open pressure and around 140 pounds on closed, when the valve is actually seated. The reason why I need to see those types of pressures is because the intake valves are big on these Hemis. The 5.7, 6.4, doesn't matter. They're big. Big means heavy. Also, to counteract the inertial load of the valves, I've got to have beefy push rods. Because you have to remember that now that you're opening and closing that valve faster and more, now you're looking at velocity times, velocity time PV NR squared, all the other stuff. Anyway, it takes more power to draw this thing down and open it up. It's more load on the entire assembly, so I need a spring press to control everything that's going on in there. So because of that, I wouldn't want to use stock components in this case, especially considering the fact that cams will typically move the power band up to anywhere between 65 and 6,800 RPM, depending on the application. If it's a 6.4, it'll only bump it up a small amount. 5.7s, you may want to stretch those out a little bit more. But the reality is that I would never recommend not running a set of springs like PSI 1516s. 1515s are okay for some smaller cams, but you know, you're really only looking at about 400 pounds, and that's really looking more like an LS spring pack than it would be for a Hemi. Again, these Hemis, big valves, heavy valve train, kind of when it comes to valve train geometry also. So just some things that you want to consider there. Now, that doesn't mean that if you run an NSR cam, the whole thing's going to fly apart like a cheap watch. It's not like that at all. But again, what you do have to consider is the fact that if you're going to be really railing on the car, and be honest with yourself here, if you're going to be railing on the car, doing some sideshow shit with it, taking it to the track a lot, doing you know, roll racing, higher mile an hour, things like that, not only do you need better springs, push rods, lifters. Hellcat lifters are my go-to lifter, by the way. But you're also going to need a set of stand key, tie bars, and collars. That's going to keep that valve train from moving around. I even picked up power with a stock cam on the stand keys, and that was weird to me initially. But you know, you start to looking at the higher RPM, and again, you look at the geometry and everything else that's going on in there. Anyway, whenever I put a cam together, I always suggest them. So I'll suggest those to you also. So again, not only do I not agree with no spring required, I believe it's springs, lifters, push rods, and stand keys if you're going to do a cam. If you're going to do it right anyway. Don't try to go cheap on this. You're already tearing the thing apart as it is. And I know nobody wants to paper up for that kind of thing, but Mopar tax, guys, this is what we're up against. So let's see. Oh, TU saying, B, there supposed to be a 2021 Shelby GT500 Special Edition from Ford, not Shelby America, that's supposed to be stripped down a couple of 100 pounds and have just over 800 horsepower, or just rumor? You know, I have heard something about that, but I didn't ever hear about it taken off. I mean, you know, they could drop something on us, of course, but look, guys, let's be honest, man. The GT500 is not getting a whole lot of love right now, and for several reasons. One, it doesn't have a real manual transmission, and it doesn't have a real automatic transmission. Not that that's a problem for some, it's just that getting used to the idea of having a DCT style transmission is a little bit tough. Now, I think that may have pushed some folks away. Also, added tags for that thing have been out of control. I've heard of added tags as high as $30,000 on those cars, guys. And they could have even gone higher. So they're turning off a lot of buyers there. And also, to that point, I've also heard, at least in one severe situation, of one car going through, it's on its third transmission and second engine. I've also heard of cars having issues not only with the engines and transmissions, but with guys just not being all that happy with the car in general. So anyway, that's the only experience I have with GT500s, because, well, none of them have been showing up to the drag strip. Now, admittedly, I haven't been to the drag strip in a couple of weeks. Been a little bit tied up with the aforementioned projects that I was talking about earlier, giving you guys the heads up on. But they're just not getting any real traction right now. And again, when you don't see them at drag strips, when you don't see them out on the street, when you don't see them really doing anything, where do you go from here? In fact, I'll take that a step farther. I've seen more C8 Corvettes just randomly, not talking about going by the shop and seeing, you know, the stuff that's going on over there. I've seen more C8 Vets randomly than I have GT500s, because I've seen 0 GT500s, either out and about at the drag strip or anywhere other than the YouTube. Again, thanks again, Sean. Rep Almighty saying, good to see you again, brother. Good seeing you too, Rep. Shawnee saying, dying to see the 89 in the garage soon. Yeah, it's going to be coming pretty quick. In fact, I've been brushing up on my paint cutting skills on that on Sierra. So, man, she's looking good too. I was surprised just how good the paint started to look. Now, keep in mind, this thing was a movie truck, okay? This is one of those situations where, and I'm not talking about Hero 1. I think this was like Stunt 1 or Stunt 2. So, yeah, it was on set, but anyway, getting back to it, it's not like the paint was really in all that great a shape to begin with, but now it's really shiny, and hey, for what it's worth, I think it looks great, and that's what I'm going to have to do to the black car, which is the 89, is I'm just going to have to start cutting paint, and it's going to probably be the better half of like start on Friday night, get done Saturday evening type of deal, so. But it's what you got to do, so be on the lookout for that. I'm looking forward to doing that, though. It'll be fun. Let's see. Oh, Team saying, Shawnee, well done, brother. Keep it up. I like it. Team Bronski saying, love my 5.7. Hey, I love my 5.7 too. It is sitting right over there. It's my truck, my work truck. So, yeah, that's, in fact, if you guys don't know, it was my original, my 14 Ram that got me into my SRT. I loved how it drove so much. I wanted to see how the cars did. So, Racer X checking in and say, what is happening, my friend? What's happening, Racer X? Everybody say what's up to Racer X. Shawnee's saying, what's the 89 making at the wheels? 380 plus? Not even on a good day, brother. So the 89 is a low compression 351. It's got AFR 185 heads. It's got a Lightning lower manifold, Lightning GT40 upper manifold, with an F-cam in 1.7s. Now, the combination was originally put together as a boost combination. In fact, the idea was to make somewhere in the neighborhood of about, I don't know, 500 horsepower-ish to the rear wheels. Not throwing a lot of boost at it, but just something that would be around that power level. And I had given the car to my dad for Father's Day, going back, God, it's got to be like, God, it's like 20 years ago. And anyway, it had a supercharger on it then, and he got to toying with it, and he's like, man, I like the way the car runs, plus, you know, it's easier on parts and things like that, and it's real torquey. So there it sits. I mean, it's like I say, it's a low compression 351. It's probably, you know, if it's on the high side, 9-to-1. 9-to-1 compression. And but it's just a neat car. You know, I'm starting to get a little bit more nostalgic for the older stuff, just because it offers up such a different driving experience than something like this does. So, but it's you know, it's a Fox Mustang, and it suffers from all the failings that any Fox Mustang has. So it's just going to be a matter of working on the thing and getting it sorted out. And in the meantime, getting it to look good in the process, which is going to be pretty cool, to say the least. Let's see. CFL James saying, why does the ESC, when in drag mode, 8 out of 10 times upshift instantly and fall flat on its face? Not all the time yet, most of the time. Almost like the traction control is still on. Man, that's a good question. I don't know. You know, some of these cars do some funky stuff in drag mode. I know of a couple of early Demons that did that. They would, on the 2-3 shift, short shift, like kind of a deep short shift, like 5,800 RPM for seemingly no reason. There's something to do with the predictive algorithm that will cause a short shift, and it's weird. Some of them do it, some of them don't. There's always rolling changes within operating systems. I know this because I've seen, you know, you can be able to tune, let's say we're talking about, perfect example is 2016 SRT Challengers. Between my car and a buddy of mine's car, they were about 6 months apart, give or take. And there were some goofy things that were different just in the things that you can see through HP tuners. not the background stuff that you can't see, and some of the things like, you know, what constitutes the predictive shift algorithms and everything else. You can play with some of the rev limits in there, but you can't really dig in too much deeper than that. But there were some differences just between his car and my car, and they were this same car. Like, there were just goofy little weird differences that didn't make any sense. So his car even sounded different than mine. It was just, again, and same, like a clone of my car. So, you know, nothing that you would really notice in any tune or any data log. So a lot of that does have to do, it goes back to tuning. You can tune that out of the car. In fact, this one back here still has a weird habit of short shifting first gear, really for no apparent reason. And it'll do it in situations where you wouldn't think that it would. In fact, it'll short shift in higher temperatures. You might say, well, why wouldn't you think it would do it in high temperatures versus low? Because the acceleration rate is slower in higher temperatures, in other words, you know, higher DAs, than it is in cooler DAs by much. And it doesn't really affect ET by enough to start sweating, but it's still kind of weird nonetheless. It will also do this, by the way, before I outro on that topic, it will also do that if you've been running around on your 20s and you switch the car to a drag pack. Let's say you've been playing around on your 20s. What will happen is Adaptive will know under what loads what your acceleration rate is. You'd be surprised how sophisticated some of this can get. But this is some things that I've at least noticed with my cars. Moving over to the 17-inch setup, you can sometimes get a bit of a short shift or a yip, what we call in the business a yip, where it chops throttle and the car noses over and comes back. You can sometimes get that if you've been running around on 20s for a long time and then switch over to your drag setup, in my case 17s for the rear, because your acceleration rate is now greater. Not only in that you're hooking up and the car is accelerating faster, but that the wheel and tire combination is smaller. So the computer sees this faster ramp up rate basically, and it thinks you're going to get to a certain RPM quicker than you normally would, so it short shifts. Anyway, there's a lot of really goofy stuff that goes on in these things electronically. I mean, it's, again, a lot more in depth. There's a lot more things going on than what we can actually extrapolate from data, aside from just knowing what can cause the weird symptoms, so to speak, and then try to tune around those things. That can cause some potential issues for when you're running around on your 20s when you tune around that. But typically you're not trying to launch the car on your 20s anyway. So anyway, without boring you to tears any further than you already may be, that's the reason for that. Racer X, no plungers on the head for tonight's live, huh? So if you've seen my, if you're on my Instagram, my wife and I were in a store today and I stuck a couple of plungers on my head. But you know what? Hang on. If it'll get me some super chat money. Hang on. No problem, Racer X. You asked for it? There you go. There's a plunger on my head. All right. So, to you saying, I owned a 6.1 SR8 Challenger for 7 years and I absolutely loved it. I miss that car every day. You know, man, that's the same. That's what I would say if I had ever owned one. There's something to be said. Hang on. There you go. There's something to be said for those cars. You know, the simpler interior. It kind of does something for me. And I've always loved the 6.1 cars and really the earlier LX platform cars. I liked that it was a little bit simpler. And I get that the newer cars are kind of neat, but you know, I got to tell you, there's something that I kind of miss about the utilitarian aspect of the earlier cars, but I feel you on that one. Rep Almighty saying, how you liking that Hellcat behind you, brother? Daily? You could daily it. But no, my daily is a 2017 Ram 1500 quad cab. It's what's known as a tradesman model. It's the base of the base of the base truck with a Hemi. I spend a lot of time on job sites, hauling material, hauling tools around, stuff like that. I need something that can take a beating and is inexpensive to keep running. And we use the Rams like my truck as fleet vehicles. The company that I work for has probably got, let me think about this, I'd say somewhere around 50 of those trucks. So, and they're holding up great. I mean, most of them right now have about, all the 17s I think have somewhere around anywhere between 100 and 190,000 miles on them, and no failures. Everything's running great with them. Let's see, but no, as far as how am I liking it, man, I love the car. It embodies a lot of the things that I've really liked with other vehicles that I've owned. It's got a little bit of my Lightnings in it. It's got a little bit of my Vipers in it. It's got some of the qualities of cars that I either couldn't afford, or one of them got sold out from underneath me in the '69 Roadrunner. So it's kind of got that B-body size to it that I really like. I'm a big fan of the bigger cars. So, B-bodies, Galaxies, the Chevelles, Impalas, things like that. I've always been a little bit more drawn to those cars than the smaller ones like Camaros or Mustangs, things like that, from back in the day, so to speak. And so because of that, it just has all these cool qualities. And, what it may lack in one area, it more than makes up for in others. I would say that if you're on the fence about picking one up, they are incredibly durable, very robust platforms. Certainly something that you can, without a doubt, as long as it's maintained, hold on to, drive it for tons of miles. We've had some at the shop with 250, 270,000 miles, daily driven Chargers, both of them. So they're durable. They actually get fairly decent fuel economy. So, all in all, I'm a big fan of it. I love it. Oh, hang on a second. Hang on. Time out here. Jermaine's checking in saying, thank you very much for that. I think my main account, main key was banned. I can't send messages super chat. No, I didn't ban you, brother. And then Antoine's saying, thank you for the cam info. You got it, brother. No, we didn't. There's no banning of you on this side, man. I don't know why that would be. But thank you very much for the contribution, man. Appreciate that. Thank you for the support. Edward's asking, oh, the head thing was supposed to be the arm flexing damn phone. I love it. Man, I'll tell you what, I've been having more issues with electronics lately. I've got a computer that's sending people into its own quarantine for emails, and a phone that is randomly not letting people call me. I don't know, it's kind of a weird deal. Anyway, T's checking to say, Race Rex in the building. Man, your channel has been a killing spree over the last couple of months. Yeah, it has. Everybody say what's up. Johnny's checking to say, Racer X, what is your horsepower meter say on your Charger at max acceleration? It just keeps spinning, man. Everybody's checking in. Team Bronski is asking, good question, and I like where you're going with this, brother, saying, do you think we'll ever see a Magnum again? No, you won't. Back in, hang on, 2016, I had to remember when I went to Mecum. It was 2016. I had a real long conversation with some of the marketing team with FCA, in particular Dodge. And one of the guys that I was able to hang out with for a very long time, this is one of the cars we talked about. And so I asked him, what about the Magnum? Was there a reason why the Magnum didn't get carried into the facelift? He said, well, yeah, nobody bought them. And I said, well, I mean, I would see them, I'd see them all the time. And he said, look, in terms of volume, they just didn't sell. And when you couple that with the idea that everybody is basically moving to these crossovers and SUVs, things like that, he said there's just not a market for that car anymore. So unfortunately, the answer to that is, I mean, not unless there is a huge outcry for it, you're just not going to see any new Magnums. Kobe saying, watch all your stuff. Love it too. Thank you very much. Keep up the news. We love to hear. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Got some cool stuff coming, man. I gotta get to it, you know. But I like it. I like staying busy. I don't like, I have hands and all. Shawnee's saying, my lower pulley Hellcat shows 705-ish on the horsepower meter on a good day. A lot of that, see, here's the thing. A lot of that has to do with how that number is calculated. There can be some things in the tune that would potentially change what the meter in the car says based on some things that are changed in the tune to kind of work with the extra airflow. So up to a certain point, it'll still be somewhat accurate, but when you start to mess with expected torque and things like that in the tune, when you're working with a little bit more aggressive combinations, that horsepower meter kind of gets thrown out the window. Let's see. Oh, Speed Freak saying, hey, he's still wanting a C6 Z06 heads cam intake alongside my Hellcat. Does a stock Hellcat beat a C6 Z06 making 600 wheel horsepower? On the drag strip, it would be tough for the vet to win that race, especially in the 8th mile. The vet would be reeling in the Hellcat on the big end, but chances are the Hellcat would win in the drag race. Even though the weight difference is there, the automatic that's in the Hellcats is unbelievably good at what it does in terms of drag racing. We're talking about a heads cam intake Z06 here, not a regular vet. So it's the Z06 is going to have a manual transmission. But with that being said, I would say that the Hellcat might win 7 out of 10 times just with how strong that vet is going to be pulling up top. Most of the vets are in that realm are realistically going to be somewhere in the 10, at least in the 1050 range, but the mile an hour is going to be ridiculous. So pick and choose your battle with the Hellcat. You can win quite a few of those races, but again, you get somebody behind the wheel of that vet that not only knows how to drive, but is experienced with that platform long enough to be able to launch it properly and rode through the gears without missing, say, 4th. You have to make sure you bring your elbow out and back when you pull that shifter back. Don't bring it towards you because you'll miss 4th. It's kind of a weird vet and Viper thing for that matter, but Viper's a little bit easier because we're anyway. That ratio may come down a little bit. It might be 50-50 at that point. On the street, no. The 600 horse vet will eat a Hellcat alive. Look, guys, I used to go sniping after Hellcats, stock Hellcats with my 450 rear wheel horsepower C5 Z06. So if that tells you anything. Now, I will say that was a pretty healthy example of that little LS6. But yeah, 600 horsepower to the rear wheels, heads cam intake Z06 is going to be very difficult to mess with. And by the way, pretty much anything after a half track, you will be, again, the phrase that I use all the time, you'll be reeling in that Hellcat like a 2-pound trout. So get ready for that one. Kobe's asking, do you think the Hellcats will ever drop in price? I don't know if they will. Let's see. I don't know if they will drop in price by enough to make it like in the $50,000 range. I mean, you can get kind of close. If you pick up one that's stickering at 65, I think you can get it into the high 50s with all the rebates and the horsepower bucks and all that. But they're not going to be any lower than that. You would think that they would be, but we'll see. Racer X saying, B Mason and I are cooking up something top secret very soon. It's going to be awesome. Yes, it is, folks. Stay tuned. Keep your eyeballs on Racer X's channel. He'll be the one letting everybody know when that comes to fruition. Let's see. Shawnee's saying, I'm actually going for a total of 70 pounds, trying to sneak into the 9s from a 10.7. I'm saying, yep, I'm fat. Just keep it up, brother. Keep it up, man. It's an inspiration for folks, man. Let me tell you something. that's one of those, any type of journey like that is definitely worth sharing. So we're stoked and cheering you on every step of the way, brother. Cody's checking in saying, hey, Mason, question. Durango has an overheating smell and smells sweet from tailpipe, but does not overheat, and so far externally no leaks. Could the valves be one of the issues? SUV sat before purchase. Sounds to me like it might have a slight pinhole leak on a head gasket, allowing some of the coolant to get into the exhaust. It could be a very small issue right now, which will grow to be a very big issue if left unchecked. One of the things that I would certainly do is pressure test the coolant system. Make sure you're not losing any coolant out of the radiator. Don't just rely on your overflow tank. Check the actual radiator itself, but have that system pressure checked. And you're going to want to do a long-term pressure check on that and just see if you're getting anything into the exhaust system. Because if you're not showing any leaks, the thing constantly has the smell of, some type of a coolant. That could be a potential issue. Other things, though, are if you're getting any, or you could just be sensitive to it, which I understand completely, the vent on the overflow tank. You could just be smelling the thing venting a little bit. You're going to have some venting into that tank that can cause that symptom as well. So worst case scenario, you got a head gasket leak, which I doubt very seriously. The best case scenario is that you're just smelling the fact that it's, that system will vent a little bit. And that's probably what you're smelling. In fact, check around the filler neck of your overflow tank. Make sure that that is good. Also, make sure you're not getting any like small leaks. Like I'm not talking, it won't necessarily just leak. Like, you just, like it's been stabbed or something. You can get a little bit of spittle sometimes come out of that. And the smell is so distinct and so pungent that, you're going to pick up on it like straight away, right? So just check for that. Again, it's not necessarily a leak that you're looking for, but just a little something. This one's done it before. Every Dodge that I've ever owned has done it a little bit to some extent, but not a lot. And so just check that out. Those are a couple of things that you're going to want to look at. Shawnee's checking in saying, Racer X, can't wait to see or to hear. Shawnee's saying, so 7 pounds of boost max for a 392. If your fuel quality is good, yeah, I'll buy in on that. But again, 7 pounds is great, provided your fuel quality is good and you've got a solid tune on the car. That's going to be the two most important things: fuel quality and the tune to go along with it. Let's see. Edward Shaker's asking, how much work would it be to swap my T6 to the 8-speed auto in my 13 SRT8? Well, that would be a pain in the ass because you'd have to have a standalone controller for the 8-speed. And I don't know of anybody that actually makes one, but you would certainly need a separate standalone controller for the 8-speed. And until they come up with that, that would be tough to do. Shawnee's asking, what is your personal best time for your 89? What configuration? I want to say that thing was running mid-11s. I don't know, 1150s, 1170s, something like that. I remember doing that in Bradenton with, this is so stupid. That car, at that stage of the game, the car really didn't run at its best. But it went 1170s at 115 miles an hour or something like that. That was with a Powerdyne supercharger what the problem was is that I don't know how much boost it was making. It was set up to make about 10 pounds of boost, but I never got the blower rebuilt. I had bought that head unit used, never got the belts replaced in it, and I think that I was losing. The way the Powerdyne units worked is they had an internal belt, not gears, which made it was great. It was they were a little bit more aggressive impeller design. Down low, they made a little bit more power, but just kind of a neat street blower. Anyway, that belt I think was failing and had basically it was just kind of falling off on the big end. So after that, I'd given the car to my dad, and that was pretty much it. But that car had run a string of, low 12s leading up to that. And NA, I want to say, with the 302 and the B cam, I think the best that it ran was a 12.2, something along those lines. And same for my coupe, by the way. Had a bunch of Mustangs over the years. I used to use Mustangs as work cars, work vehicles, because I could put 60,000 miles a year on that car and just change the oil, beat the living crap out of it, have that thing on job sites all over the place. And they were great, got good fuel economy. And I mean, when you're paying for your own vehicle and your own maintenance, you need something that's going to be durable, and cars did great. Shawty's checking in, saying thanks to you. Quick break saying, what up, brother man? What's up, man? Oh, hang on just a second. Hang on. Kobe Warren checking in said, okay, I guess y'all are just now getting to the whole plunger thing. Yeah. Racer X talked me into it. Jermaine, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that contribution to the cause, man. I really do. Thank you. Alex Andrews saying more plungers, more money. Hey, check out my Instagram where I was basically playing around with my wife, and I stuck 2 plungers on my bald head. So, thanks, guys, man. I appreciate that very much. But thank y'all, man. I appreciate that. Let's see. Racer X, hey, thanks, man. I appreciate the contribution. Saying, have a good weekend, buddy. Keep doing your thing. Looking forward to running a stupid number in January. Absolutely, man. Well, thank you very much, brother. I appreciate the contribution. Thank you all of y'all, very much. Man, I need to keep this plunger handy. By the way, the whole purpose of this plunger, if you're wondering, this is going to be a dent removal tool for my wife's Camaro. So, see if I can make that happen. There's like a pop-in dent on the passenger side rear quarter panel. The problem is that I can't get to it without basically cutting a bracket out. It's the spare tire bracket. So anyway, I'm gonna try to pull that thing out and test my luck. We'll see if it'll work. Let's see. Quick break in the house. Philip's checking in, saying, hey, B, any experience with the PO296 fault? Turned after 108mm throttle body, ported snout, demon injectors, filled with E20 per tuner. Ran fine with lower dampener and 93 octane. Now in limp mode, 18 Hellcat. I think that the 0296, is that the throttle body code? It could be airflow. Oh God. Some of those I just didn't really ever run into because we're using a bunch of stock parts. But I think that is an airflow code. I can't remember off the top of my head. Some of the O2 codes I can't. In other words, the 02XX codes. I can't remember some of those now. I just haven't run into it for a while. I'd have to look it up, but yeah, it sounds like it's an airflow issue. I don't think it's an expected torque issue. But filled with E20. Where'd you get E20 from, man? That's what's throwing me off, man. But again, it sounds like it's an airflow issue. With the throttle body. And if it's the one that I'm thinking of, try doing a throttle relearn. Have your tuner do the throttle relearn in the tune with the software, not the pedal thing. Don't do a throttle relearn and also reset adaptives. See if that'll help it to figure it out. But if it is the one that I'm thinking of, you're gonna have to change the airflow numbers at idle. You go engine and HP tuners. It's engine, airflow, idle. Idle's actually got a lot of different tables to it. It's the second one, idle airflow. It's probably something you're gonna have to change in that table. Hopefully that helps. That's kind of what I'm thinking. If that's not what it is, then do that anyway, because you need to do that with that big ass throttle body. Jeffrey Benner saying, "What up, B? What up, Jeffrey?" Dempsey's checking in saying, "Any thoughts on the upcoming TRX?" Well, it's a little late to the game. Let me just say that first and foremost. Secondly, yeah, I guess the TRX is going to be pretty cool. Lots of power, lots of suspension, lots of attitude, lots of awesome. But I also want to see something for my street bros, man. I want to see something like Little Red Express-ish. You know, throw the Hellcat engine in a pickup truck. Throw the 392 in a truck, for that matter. I mean, again, it's the platform's there. It ain't like you ain't got the platform. Run the platform, run the engine. I mean, that should be peanut butter and jelly, dude. How do you have a truck? Like, that's the easiest thing that you could put a big engine in. Like, how do you not put it in that? How is that not your test mule? In fact, if I were, see, this is what, hi, FCA, my name is Brian Mason. I think you could use my talents and my experience, not only in your marketing department, but quite frankly, in your product development as well. See, here's the thing. If I were engineering and working with this type of a platform, I would try to test it in trucks because number one, it's easy to install and take out. Number two, they're heavy, although you can just add ballast to one of these things. But I mean, there's nothing more cool than a truck that hauls ass. I mean, guys, I live in Texas. We got trucks that run there are no 9-second trucks pretty much everywhere you look down here. 8-second trucks are not uncommon, and 7-second trucks, these are street trucks, by the way, are not unheard of. Yeah, that's how kind of we do things down here. So anyway, looking forward to it. Can't wait to see what they come up with on that. Gordon saying, "What up, B? Hit me up if you need some help getting that paint into shape." I will do it. I've got my orbital already geared up with my griots. I don't know, the shit that comes in the yellow bottle. I don't know. You can polish a turd with that stuff, and that's really all I'm going to be doing is just polishing this stuff out. But I will definitely be hitting you up. Let's see. Mike D saying, "Yammer away, sir. You get a lot of praise from your fellow YouTubers like Racer X and Demonology and RT Life." Well, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. We all kind of have our niche. I like doing the live shows. I like doing live shows because I get to interact with you guys. And listen, if y'all want content, dude, all you got to do is go into my playlist. I've got a couple of 100 videos that I've put together. It's been my thoughts on vehicles, what works, what mods work, what doesn't work. You know, at one point, you know, it's my thoughts on this car, that car, this truck, or what have you. You know, minor reviews on products, you know, air filters, tires. I just did one for the Nittos. I mean, it's a lot of fun, man. I enjoy it. So, but yeah, I got a lot of praise for those guys too. They all do a great job. Cattle Sound Nice asking, if you add a Hellcat blower to a 5.7, is it going to blow up the motor? Nah, it's not going to blow up the motor. You just need a tune for it. But that's really not the direction I would go if it were me. I would still go with the E-Force kit from Edelbrock, even though it's a little bit pricey. You can go, I mean, you got to get the adapters, and you're still going to be running your stock belt system, so boost may be a little bit limited. But no, the IHI setup, I mean, the IHI blower is a great blower, and really any positive displacement supercharger is something that, you know, you're going to want to make sure that you've got a solid tune with. You have to remember that a positive displacement supercharger is, for lack of a better way of putting it, it's instant boost. It will make if you've got a 5.7, it's going to make power the way that a 426 would make power in your car. It adds so much power down low. It's so torque rich and instant power rich that it's intoxicating in a way. So if I were to do it in a 5.7, I would do it with an E-Force kit, mainly because it's a simpler, and it's basically boost in a box. And then from there, send it to somebody that'll put a legit tune on the thing, because they do come fairly well neutered from the factory. I mean, you got to be budgeting for a tune anyway, but at least with the Edelbrock, you can have a base tune kind of already working for you. And then once you get the car, you can, from there, you know, get get a better tune put on it than what came from the factory, and have a lot of fun with that car. I've driven those, and they are a riot. Hey, Jermaine and Antoine, man, thank y'all very much. I appreciate the contributions, guys. Mike G saying, at Catalyst 99, I don't think you can directly hook up a Hellcat supercharger to the 5.7. No, you've got to have there's some adapter plates that you got to have, and there's, obviously some belt routing that's going to have to change. There's a few things that you've got to change to run that blower, and it's, to be honest, it's not quite as plug and play as you would like for it to be. And you've got the cooling system and everything else that comes along with that. I would prefer to go the route of just boosting a box and call it good. You're not shaving money off of your build by going with the Hellcat blower. Let me just say that straight away. Shawnee's asking, is your 89 all black, or does it have the stock lower gray ground effects? She is all black, baby. Black with gray interior. Black with gray interior, GT. Really love that car. Mike G's checking in at Catalyst. Oh, yeah, saying, I know people who have Magnuson and Vortex superchargers from the 5.7 Hemis, adds power up to 545 crank horsepower, but they baby drive them and short burst speed them. Better to buy a Hellcat. That's kind of the thing too, is you have to remember everything's got its limits. And if you stay within the confines of your own house, so to speak, when you're messing with the 5.7s, you can have a lot of fun. And guys, y'all know, man, one of the things I would have loved to have done leading into this was to do a build on a 5.7. A 5.7 with a 6.4 intake with one of my cams. In fact, Dr. Diff and I have got a really good cam for 5.7s. So Joker cam, long tubes, the whole shooting match, man. Just put something together that is a lot of fun to play with, and get out there on a 150 shot or at least a 100 shot and just goof off and have fun with the car. And don't get it twisted. There's a lot of really quick 5.7s that are out there. It's just that you got to work a little bit to get them because the cars are heavy. But just keep in mind one thing: the 5.7 is a powerhouse, man. It really is. It's the corporate V8, and it makes a ton of horsepower. In its lowest form, it makes 370 horsepower, which, I'll be honest, I'll say that's a little bit shy. Just based on what I've seen on a dyno. They typically put down roughly the same power numbers as the trucks, which are rated at 395. So, oh, Queasy, I think this is right about the time I started wearing the plunger on my head. I love it. That's awesome. Thanks again, guys. I appreciate the contributions. Kobe, thanks, man. Ship Nation saying, what tires do you recommend for traction racing going for digs plus decent mileage tread? I think MTs are overkill for me because I daily drive 300 miles a week on my 392 Scat. Well, here's the thing. If you want the track, here's what I recommend doing. If you're going to play on the weekends, get you a beater set of rims for the rear wheels and tires for your commute back and forth. If you're worried about tread life and things like that, believe me when I tell you, it'll be cheaper. In fact, you can see them right if you look right there. Those are an original set of SRT wheels. By the way, they're in mint shape, with what would have been like last year, maybe year before last, a brand new set of Atturo AZ 850s on them. And if you go into my archives, you can see when I had those wheels and tires were on Shalandra, and I was doing a little bit of a review on them. Here's the thing: if you want to play on the weekends, get you a set of stock wheels. Just find a beater set; it doesn't matter. Throw some Atturos on it, run those back and forth to work during the week. And then if you want to go playing on the weekends, get you a set of the either Nitto Tri-5s, Tri-5 R2s are good. That's what I'm running on this car now. They actually run about half the size big too. If you get 305s, like if you've got the 10.5-inch wheels, if you get 305s, or they're really more like 315s. You get 275s are a little bit wider. So just know that coming into it. If you got a Scat, you get 245s. If you like the stock look, they'll be a little bit wider. But anyway, that's what I would do. It's a little bit more pricey on the front end, but you save your tires. And if you got a place to store them, obviously that option, again, makes sense. That's what I would do, and that's what I've done too. Again, when I was running Shalandra back and forth to work on occasion, that was my beater set back there, and I didn't really beat them up. I just drove the car, and it did fine. I mean, they always were great. They were great in the rain, man, and nice safe tire that, I wouldn't run the thing up to 130 on a regular occasion on a roll, but, for just being a tire that's, does tire stuff, everything did fine. So, Shawnee's saying, aren't your drag tires basically 28 inches tall, same as your street tires, or does the drag tire give you just a little gear ratio? It gives me just a little bit of gear ratio. I think they're 27.5 or something like that for the 305 45 17s versus the 305 35 20s, which interestingly enough, I was kind of panning the Tri-5 R2s, 2Rs, whatever they are. I was initially panning those tires a little bit just because I didn't really like the way that they looked. A little bit busy on the sidewall, but one thing I can tell you is that for a street tire that has a softer compound, it's tough to beat that tire. In fact, if you guys get a chance, if you haven't seen it, go back and look at the wet weather video that I did for that tire. One thing that nobody's picked up on in that video, and I find this really weird, and you guys may have heard me talk about it before, but one of the interesting things in the video is that I'm passing everybody on that highway. I'm not over in the left-hand or over in the right-hand lane, going slow or anything like that. I'm in the left-hand lane going highway speeds, passing everybody in the left-hand lane. So that's how much confidence I had in those tires in the wet. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be any wide open throttle hits with a Hellcat in the rain. I mean, you wouldn't do that with any tire on the back of it. There is no acceleration test that I'm going to try to pull off. The thing is that it just did well as a tire. So anyway, take that for what it's worth. But just my quick review. And again, Jermaine and Alex, thank you all very much, man. Say more plungers, more money. I love it. Thank you all very much, man. Ryan McKenzie's asking, let's see, saying, what's up, B? Is there any difference from the 2011 to 14 392 versus the 15 to present 392 other than the horsepower? Why are the horsepower different? There's a little bit of a difference in the tune between the two engines. Also, the 11 to 14s are hydraulic power steering as opposed to electric power steering in the newer cars. And the hydraulic power steering does rob a little bit of power. So that's why you'll see a slight difference in the power between the two. But I mean, it's nothing that you would ever feel or notice. You would have to have them on a dyno to tell the difference. But that being said, the earlier tuned cars, to give you an idea, would put down to the rear wheels on a Mustang dyno like 395 to the rear wheels. The newer cars would put down 405, maybe 410. But that was kind of the swing. So in other words, the range on the early cars would be like 485 to 495 to the rear wheels versus, 385 to 395 to the rear wheels. And newer cars would be like 400 to maybe 410 to the rear wheels. But that's the only real difference. There's a little bit of a difference in the operating system, in the tune there. But it's part of it has to do with the power steering system that it has also. And you got to remember that they're rated in net horsepower numbers. And so That's with the full exhaust, the alternator, the water pump, the power steering pump, if that's so equipped. And so all of that has to be taken into account when those engines are rated. Let's see. Mike G saying, B Mason, I've had the 6.1 intake manifold, JBA Shorties, Hellcat airbox, retuned PCM Corsa exhaust. Is this solid enough for my RT? No dyno as of yet. Yeah, no, that's a good place to begin. I mean, you've already ticked all the boxes, man. You got the 6.1 intake manifold, good stuff. JBA Shorties, good headers. We've seen some actually fairly decent gains with those, especially with the NA stuff. Not so much with the Hellcats, but Hellcat airbox, yep. Retuned PCM Corsa exhaust. I mean, that's pretty badass, man. I mean, that's a really well put together combination. I think you're gonna have a lot of fun with that. So yeah, you're good, man. Oh, Luke's saying, I never understood the reason why Dodge killed off the Magnum engines. And then he said, I really like the 8-liter V-tail. And the 8-liter really wasn't Magnum per se. The Magnums were killed off in lieu of the Hemis, and but the 8-liter, good engine, very simple engine, very easy to work on too. It's a shame. Let me just say this: it is a bummer that the engines that are powering the 5.7 and the 392 and this thing back here, some things could have been done within an engine architecture conversation that would have made them a lot easier to work on, especially if they followed the basically the architecture of the 8-liter V10, which is basically, if you do the math on them, it's more or less a Pontiac 383 with two extra cylinders added to it. So, cool, cool tidbit there for you. The guy that developed that engine was a big Pontiac fan. Cody's checking in saying, okay, cool, because vision-wise isn't the greatest, but smell has been my saving grace. Power-wise, it still feels amazing and pulls pretty darn good for a 6,000-pound vehicle. Absolutely, man. And they do. Racer X, thank you very much for the contribution, man. I appreciate it. Cody's also asking, he had a question about a coolant smell, saying, could it also be because it sat for a long time, even after purchase, and catching up on maintenance and repairs to make it safe to drive? At least everything's finally getting to move. Could be. But normally it'll be because of a venting thing. That's typically it. Take a look at the caps, the filler caps, things like that. Those are areas that can cause you problems with that as well. So just anything that's associated with filling, moving, transporting that fluid in that system is something to look at. But if you don't see any leaks, I mean, really go looking for them. If you don't see any leaks, chances are it is a venting issue. But again, you would certainly know it if it was a head gasket issue. But here's the problem with this. I've seen goofy stuff happen with engines just in general. But if you can smell it, it's not going through a combustion process. So I think you're in good shape there. And yes, anytime a vehicle sits for any real length of time, sitting is worse, far worse for a vehicle than driving in many cases. In fact, it can be fatal even within just a couple of years of the thing sitting. I kid you not. So, especially if it's sitting outside unprotected, God, it can add up to be very bad. Those things are made to be run, and every piece on it has a lifespan, whether it's run or not. And typically, like for hoses, you're looking at anything rubber is anywhere from 6 to 10 years. You got to replace it anyway. Whether it's run, sitting on a shelf, or whatever, it just perishes after a certain amount of time. Philip's taking us saying, thank you for your advice. Greatly appreciate it. I live in Kansas City. Ethanol pumps available in the Midwest. Very cool with that. HE37 saying P0296 code post catalyst fuel trim system bank. Post catalytic showing 2 lean. System showing 2 lean. I would check that. Look at the fuel trims and see what's going on there. Look at your O2 voltage. Look at your short-term fuel trims and see what's going on with that. It may be that you need to just turn those rear O2s off. Oh, CFL, thank you very much. Saying missed the ESC in drag mode, instantly upshifting and falling on itself question prior. Thanks. Oh, so one of the things that, so it's kind of a weird thing. There's, when you, and it really should do it almost all the time, but when you're in drag mode, in your shifting protocol, you have predictive shift. And predictive shift takes into account a lot of how the car is driven. It looks at acceleration rates in different loads, and it predicts when to upshift. Now, you've got parameters in the transmission tune as far as where the car is going to shift based on specific loads and output shaft RPM. But within that, you have an acceleration rate, and the computer is looking at an acceleration rate, a table. This is stuff we just don't have access to in the tune, but I'm just kind of walking you through sort of how this works. You're trying to at least conceptualize it so you can get an idea for how it works. Even though you've got tables that are telling the car when to shift, it has to anticipate the shift. So in other words, let's say you have a shift point of 6,200 RPM in first gear. If you, from first to second gear, if you are at a dead stop and you have perfect traction on a prepared surface, you go to wide open throttle, the car will accelerate at a specific rate. If the computer thinks that you're going to get to your target output shaft RPM too quickly, it can actually back the throttle off and initiate the shift early, which can make the car shift a little bit early. It's kind of a weird thing. The way you get around that in the tuning is you make sure that your rev limits are set high enough to where you don't get yourself into that situation. Sometimes you have to adjust shift points a little bit lower to get it to act just right. There's quite a bit of changes you need to make in the tune that you can work around, or at least, but in this case, I have seen some of the earlier, not only the demons or anything with drag mode, but Hellcats have kind of a weird issue with short shifting. And like, for example, my car has a weird habit of short shifting in hot weather, which is kind of counterintuitive because in hotter weather or higher DA conditions, the acceleration rate is lower because the car's just not accelerating as quickly. So predictive doesn't have to freak out. Predictive just, for whatever reason, just short shifts it. If I change those parameters with my drag setup, I run the risk of, with my street setup, just having higher shift points, because with a larger tire, again, everything's run off of output shaft speed of the transmission. With that larger tire comes a slower acceleration rate in that the tire is turning less RPM for any given speed. So less RPM for any given speed means that with the same amount of torque applied to it, it will just take it slightly longer to get to a specific output shaft speed, even though the mile an hour itself could be, it would be higher with the larger tire. So anyway, not trying to wear you out on this. There's just some things that it's probably something that can be worked out within a tune. I've worked it out with this one. When it was stock, it short shifted every gear, kind of funny. But now it shifts, 6,300, 6,250. I mean, pretty much like clockwork. So anyway, hopefully that helps you with that. But that's kind of what we've noticed. The other thing that can cause it again is if you've been running the car around on your 20s and then throw a 17-inch wheel and tire setup on it and take it directly to the drag strip. what'll happen, again, the 17s presumably are shorter than your 29-inch tires that are on the car from factory. You know, it's just height variance, right? What can happen? What can happen with that? And it can take a couple of hits for it to start to figure things out a little bit. But what can happen there is that because the tire is shorter, the acceleration rate is greater than what it's used to seeing, and so it can kind of freak out a little bit and, you know, pull throttle back. So, you know, I've seen that right after putting a tune together. In fact, I've even, you know, when I'm at the track, if I'm doing an on-site tune change, whether it's my car or, you know, a couple of other cars that I, you know, kind of help to maintain on a regular basis, if you want to call it that. But I'll even say, look, the first pass is just a sacrificial pass. The second pass is typically when it starts to act right. And I've just noticed that that's just the way these cars are. Again, it's predictive, trying to find its place in the world. And even though you have very specific parameters that you're working from in the transmission, it's that predictive shift algorithm that kind of is the glue that makes all of that work. It's not, unfortunately, it's not as simple as just I see RPM, I shift. Because you have to remember, there's different load scenarios that can mean that, okay, if I'm only spinning the thing to say 4,000 RPM, but I'm at a fairly high load, let's say you're towing a trailer or something like that, versus going downhill, you know, it's just, you know, it's going to get to these numbers with lower or greater throttle inputs. That's where that predictive shifting really comes into play. Anyway, it's a bunch of freaking magic as far as I'm concerned. I just work with what I got. Let's see. Brendan's saying, thanks for all the info you share on our cars. I took your advice and kept my 392 stock and just enjoy it for now. That's what I would do, man. Listen. And look, man, I was able to run with a tune and, again, a cleaned up intake manifold. Believe me, it wasn't ported. That intake was ported later and is now on Rob's car. Y'all know Rob from Racer X. That car's got my personal manifold on it. Never be replicated again, by the way. I had to backfill that thing with epoxy. But it flows its ass off, baby. But no, yeah, stock, the way you're sitting, leaving it right now, you're going to have, you'll be good. Cattle79 is asking, what's the biggest wheel you can put on a narrow body without performing major surgery to your Challenger? Without major surgery, you can put a 10.5 on the back of it. You'll have to, let me rephrase that. A 10-inch wheel, 10.5, let me put it like this. I've got 10.5s on the back of it right now. And I didn't have to do anything to that, to anything really, other than move the fender wells around a little bit. But I didn't have to take a hammer and, you know, beat the thing senseless with that particular setup. Now, that being said, if I was running a drag setup, which is a little bit different offset, you know, it depends on the offset that you're working with. Typically, I think those are plus 25s for those wheels. In that case, you don't have to do much, but you will have to move the inner fenders around a little bit. I've got a video of me doing that on this car, as a matter of fact. In fact, because these Nittos are like a size, like a half size bigger, like instead of being 305, they spec out almost like a 315 would on the passenger side rear. I've got to do a little bit of massaging to the inner fender. More so than I had to with the Tri-5s. So anyway, hopefully that answers the question. But 10.5s with the 20s, about as much as you can really get away with. If you're going to be going with like a drag and, you know, wheel and tire setup, don't try to put anything too big on the back of the car. You don't need it. Dark Star 9.5 with a 305 45. I mean, that's the way to go. Bravados. It was an 18 by 10s, I think, for the Bravadas with 305 45s on the back of those. Also a good way to go. Zephyr checking and said, what's up, Professor Mason? Got the fist bump. I like it. Ron McKinney saying, thank you, B. Thank you very much. Let's see. And hopefully CFL, hopefully that helped with the answer for what you're asking, brother. But I appreciate the contribution very much, man. Appreciate that. Mike Horn saying a Hellcat Supercharger or Whipple for my 6.1 SRT8. Ooh, those cars. Go with the Whipple because that, or just again go with the E-Force, man. It's a complete kit. And it's clean and they work, man. Let's see. Biaga's saying, oh, what's up, B? Getting random PO 420 code in my 16 SS. Any thoughts? 420 code. Experienced a couple of those myself. Refresh my memory of what the 420 is, and I might be able to walk you through it. I just don't know the codes off the top of my head. We just don't really run into too many codes. It's just when you work within the parameters that you're working with, you just don't run into the codes. Some of the failures that we'll see, I just can't remember all of them off the top. PO 126, was that one of them? The temperature not high enough or not low enough or whatever it was for the rear O2s when you change them to, they're off but they're really not off, and you're working within. Anyway, there's a lot of goofy codes. I'll put it like this: if you ever get bored, there's got to be a video. If not, I might even put one together. Look at all the fault codes that are associated with your vehicle. It looks like you're reading War and Peace, man. That is, I didn't even know they had codes for some of the things that they've got. I mean, it's just, the list literally goes on and on and on and on and on. And what's funny is that when you go to tuning one of these things, there's a lot of the codes that, you know, if you pull the cats off, you've got layer after layer. It's like peeling an onion and how many different codes that you have to turn off and how many tables that you have to change just to make one change in the Mopars. Whereas some of the operating systems, you just O2s on, off, or O2s on, off, on, you know, for the rear O2s. It's crazy. It's just nutty, but you've got to be able to make all these changes to make it work properly. There's ways you can do it and kind of hack it and it'll kind of work, but you've got to be able to do it the right way. Anyway, getting back to it. Fill me in on what the code's for. Maybe I can walk you through it. Let's see. Kevin's got a good question saying, hey Mason, for 5.7s, do you recommend getting a better torque converter with a trans tune, particularly the 5-speed cars? Not necessarily. I don't think you need to spend that money if all you're doing is tuning the transmission. It really isn't needed if you've got the stock camshaft. Now, if you want to upgrade, here's what you're up against. The NAG 1 cars, or the 5.7, well, you're talking about the 5-speed cars here in particular. The problem with going with a higher stall speed is that the car can seem a bit mushy down low. You lose a little bit of that initial snap. You feel like you have to give the car just more throttle to get it to go. The Circle D's got some better torque converters out now than what was out even just a couple of years ago that are kind of higher stall converters, but they do pretty well under street conditions. I just haven't driven one yet, but I keep hearing about them. But one of the things I want to caution you on is, you know, what would you rather do, or what really is the goal for the car? You might look into a gear swap before you look into a converter swap. You know, yeah, it's pricey, but a 370 gear can really liven up that car. And because it's got more traditional gear ratios in it, not the ultra aggressive first gear ratios like what the 8-speed has, then you can kind of get away with that 370 and it'll liven it up quite a bit. Now, yeah, you'll lose a little bit of fuel economy on the highway, but not that much. I mean, you're not looking at a huge difference. But, you know, think about that before you start thinking about torque converters. Because again, especially if you got a stock cam and you don't need the extra converter. I've driven cars with Paramount converters. I've driven cars with Southern, what was it? Southern Hot Rods converters, and they're good, but they're mushy. You know they can handle the power, and you know they're going to launch like a rocket ship. But unless you're at the drag strip, they can be a little bit laborious to drive. But once you get used to it, it ends up being the new normal for you. Cody's asking, I'll definitely keep those in mind. I've been contemplating selling because previous owner did not take care of it at all, and each day it's like I find a new problem with it. I got to spend more money. I know that feeling. Boy, do I ever know that feeling. Felix checking is saying, thank you, HU37. That's what I found as well. I thought about turning off the rear O2s. Definitely do that. Ben Wayne's checking in, got the 2 thumbs up arm flex, saying, thanks for sharing all your knowledge. Sure, man. Thanks for hanging out with us. Cody's checking in. To add on to what I've said, it's to the point where I could spend that money on building a base or SXT Dodge Neon or Honda Civic. Dude, SRT4 Neon, pretty sweet. Or I should say just SRT4. It's not an SRT4 Neon. Let's see here. Levi's asking, saying, "Hey, this might sound dumb, but I was talking to a guy who used to have a Cam 6.1, and he said to not put tubes on it because it will rob me for power. Could you confirm this for me?" Well, what he's probably saying is that if you have a 6.1, well, 6.1s are a little bit different story. 6.1s, I would say throw long tubes on it and you'll be fine. If he's talking about the 6.4, he's onto something there. You don't really lose power with long tubes as much as they just don't benefit you that much. I mean, I've had them on the dyno, and the only time you really can tell the difference between a long tube car, and we're talking about 6.4s here now, the car that is typically known to not pick up from long tubes. The only time you can tell the difference between a long tube car and a standard, the shorty or even mid-length, if you want to call them that, headers for the Mopars or for the 6.4s, partial throttle application. So you got partial throttle and that initial torque. Long tubes do a lot in terms of power down low, but because of how wide the lobe separation angle is, I'm not like Wu-Tang. What I'm talking about is you've got like your intake or your exhaust lobe and your intake lobe turning this way. If that lobe separation angle is real wide and there's not a lot of overlap, that's the area where my pinkies would be. If there's not a lot of pinky touching, for lack of a better way of showing you, if there's not a lot of overlap there, there's not a lot of benefit for the long tubes. Also, time, just actual tick-tock, like literal time, you just have more time for overlap at low RPM than you do at high RPM when you don't have any real overlap. So that's why long tubes really don't help. But for the 6.1's got a different load profile. You can actually get away a little bit more with the 6.1 with exhaust and things like that. So, but size it the right way. You need 1 3/4 inch long tubes to make it work properly. Hopefully that answers that question. Viaga's saying, the 0420 is for catalyst system efficiency below threshold. That means you're getting it random. I was thinking a melted cap, but they seem okay. Probably bad fuel retarding timing. Actually, no. What that would be? Well, it could be. It could be cat over temp. That would be another thing that would potentially cause that. And so I would just look at that. I mean, chances are your cats are going to be fine. And there could be some parameters you can change in that tune to kind of make that problem go away. But more than likely it is, I mean, you're correct to think that there could be a potential issue with the cat, but it sounds to me like if it's doing that, really there should be a kicker that wouldn't allow it to show a code if it's going into cat over temp. And cat over temp would just mean that it's throwing more fuel at it. And it's seeing more of a delta that it would like to see from the primary to the secondary O2 sensor. Could be an O2 sensor issue, but usually it'll freak out if it's, it may just freak out lean or just stop reading altogether. So you'd have to look at, you need to do a data log on the car and look at the rear O2s and just make sure they're switching back and forth just fine. Let's see. Oh, Levi's saying, by the way, I'm about to put a cam in and porting my heads. Yeah, you're going to need long tubes. If you're putting a cam in it, then yeah, you're putting long tubes on it. That needs to be part of the cost of admission for that. Queez is asking, do the 5.7s feel more of a torquey snap than a Coyote? Yes, they do. That was one of my complaints about the Coyotes, is that they just, at that time, they just didn't have the snap. They're closer now than they ever were, but yeah, they're just not as, what's the right way to put it? They just don't feel as meaty as the 5.7 does. Let's see. Zephyr RD said, "All right, B, I've been taking your advice with the Gatrag 3.7. Where can I find one?" Man, try one of the dealerships. Best place to try to find one though is online. See if you can find somebody selling one. This is where your skills, junkyard picking and dumpster diving, are going to start to come into play. They're expensive as hell to get them new, so that's where I would start. See if you can find one local and go from there, because it's not any fun shelling out kind of dough. But it's definitely the way that I would go. Also, check and see if that Gatrag unit is serviceable at this stage. I think Motive gear had gears for the Gatrag housing. Now you may still need to take the pumpkin out and have it serviced. You may take it just to a rear end place, or a shop near you can probably handle that. But see if Motive has a Gatrag I think it's a 228 millimeter rear end. Tell them what you've got and they'll know what to look for. But I think, or just give Motive a shout on Monday. They might have what you're looking for. Phoenix saying log tubes rob money on the 6.4. So what I've seen in terms of power output on the 6.4 with long tubes is pretty negligible up top. In fact, just because of the cam profile in the 6.4 and the intake design also in the 6.4, what you'll find is that, if the two power curves are like, if this is the long tubes, you'll find that if it ever is above the shorty header, it's not that much above it through the mid-range. And again, really it's right on the hit, that initial throttle response. That's what is that tip-in torque. That's what the long tubes favor for the 6.4s. Now from there, because there's no scavenging, you have to remember that a long tube header is going to create more resistance for the gas running through it. So because of that, up top, you'll notice that it doesn't maintain the power as well. In fact, I've seen them lose power with long tubes, 6.4s anyway. It's really if you're spinning them at a little bit higher RPM than you should be, but you'll notice that there's just nothing up top to gain. Everything with long tubes is down low. Again, it's a great drivability mod, but are you gonna paper up for that type of a mod? Like, are you really gonna throw money down for something that is drivability related and not outright performance related? Let me present it to you another way. Would you buy $1,500 headers and spend another $500 to have them installed? Or would you just rather put a pedal commander on it and give it a little bit of the thumb and make your pedal a little bit more reactive to your foot and get more of the benefit out of a $250 or $350 pedal commander than you would out of that entire exhaust system, based on really what you're working with. Keeping in mind that the pedal commander doesn't add any power; it just adds driver command torque to the driving experience. You're just, if your foot moves this much, and you're expecting X number of acceleration per se, and now you move it that much and it pushes you back a little bit more because it's physically opening the throttle body more. It's the same net result. In fact, you can get more of a result out of that pedal commander than you can out of the headers. So what do you do? What are you doing with the car? I mean, is this a supporting modification? Are you going to put a cam in the car? Or are you going to be doing some extrude hunting with the intake manifold? Things like that. These are the type of things that you have to think about when you are contemplating throwing a set of long tubes, especially long tubes on a 6C. Oh, CFL, I have 17 rears on it. Yet it also does it from day one with the 20-inch necks and still have no trans brake working either. Sounds like you need a reflash on that one then, because that is all software related, brother. Cody Boss is saying, it would be cool for Dodge to bring back the SRT4. I've been saying that for a long ass time, man. I don't know when they're going to never ever do that, unfortunately. But yeah, love me some SRT4s. Saying 4-cylinders are getting a lot faster. So it's like, it's basically saying it's like it's time. Yeah, I mean, with as many, I mean, well, you know what they would do? If they brought out something like that, they would just put a Hellcat engine in it. You know what I mean? It's kind of funny when you think of it like that, but yeah, it's just one of those things, man. I would love it if they did somehow or another bring back something a little bit more raw. This is something that I feel is really lacking, and one of the big reasons why I'm so excited to be working on my old Mustang again, to be working with my wife's Camaro, or to be messing with that old truck. I like the rawness. I like the feel of those vehicles, and it's something that, to be honest, you just don't get in these modern cars. And the last of the real fun, and y'all know I've got the biggest crush on SRT4s. I'm kind of a hot hatch fan also. The older Rabbits, the GTIs, pretty much anything along those lines. GLHs. I even love the old Daytonas. I'm just kind of a front wheel drive fan, only because they're just different. They're fun because they're different. It would be cool if there was something else like that, but unfortunately, the way that safety and all this other stuff is, the way that it is now, you're just never really going to get that feel back. Like, the ST, the Ford, was it Fiesta ST, whatever it is, those types of hot hatch type cars, or neon-ish type cars, there wasn't anything to them. I mean, they were a shell with an airbag and some seat belts, and so they didn't weigh that much. Let me tell you something. What was it? The Stage 3 Neon with rated at 305 horsepower. It was probably making 305 horsepower with the front tires, by the way. The car didn't weigh anything, and they were fast as hell. And anyway, I've got some cool stories with those cars that will, be the sure cure for insomnia for you. But yeah, I kind of miss those types of cars, and I've done my thoughts videos on those types of cars before too. And if I had an unlimited budget and unlimited room, there would be something like that in there for sure. Let's see. Oh, let's see. Levi's saying also he was doing a pull on the road the other day, and at about 5,000 RPM, he noticed the engine light came on and started flashing. Then I shifted it the next year, and it went away. Ordered to misfire code, then cleared it, and haven't seen it since. Oh, so what's weird about? Let me tell you something about misfire codes. So here's Hellcats are bad about them. And the funny story with me and Hellcats, when I was really getting into this stuff, when I was working for Alex over at Pipes Performance, I had the unenviable task of, so I would do the initial data log on the vehicles that would come in. If I felt like the car needed to be smoke checked or something like that, if I saw something in the initial data log that I didn't like that would cause an issue for tuning, then we would go from there. From there, one of the other things that I would do is I was the one that would do the baseline dyno pulls on all the cars. So I would, checks out, everything's healthy, cool, let's get a baseline on the thing. I would do a road test. Obviously, I'm data logging it all the way around. It's part of the initial vehicle intake procedure. Then from there, if it passes everything looks good, data looks good on the dyno, then it's good for tuning. And so, very thorough, very by the book. And then I'd put this protocol together because I didn't want to have any issues. Like we would have with remote tuning where cars weren't validated. And this is just a validation process. Anyway, had a car on the dyno, and this is a black Hellcat, and emotions with some of these things. It's after you've been around them for long enough, you don't really ever get complacent because you're kind of going off in checklists and everything's checking out fine, everything's cool. And one of the things that will happen if you pop one of the cars, which does happen. I mean, I've seen stock cars let go on the dyno. And anyway, one of the things, if one of the misfire counters goes nuts and just starts, it looks like, it starts going crazy. It's like one of the reflex every time it's just like every time it goes to fire, it throws a misfire code. I had this Hellcat on the dyno. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling on here, and I thought I blew it up. And they just called Alex and went, man, I think I popped one. He's like, really? What happened? I explained it to him, and he goes, nope, it's false. Just this false. Every once in a while, you'll just have an issue. This car, every once in a while, will have a weird misfire episode. And nothing wrong with the car. Fueling looks great. Data looks beautiful. Tuned spot on. Just has a little bit of an episode. It's not a real misfire. So a couple of things though, if you're pull the plug, make sure that there's not something goofy going on in there. You can potentially have a misfire that you may think heals itself. They don't ever heal themselves. Pull the plug on that cylinder, in this case number 2, make sure, in this case plugs, make sure that everything's looking good. No need to do a compression check or anything like that. If it's running good, it's not smoking, nothing weird. But for your own sanity, check it. I've seen cars run into an issue, and this has happened on a couple of occasions, where they've popped a ring land, but they didn't blow the piston up. So the rings butted, popped, but just pulled a chunk out of the piston, which kind of plays around in the cylinder for a minute. You can think of what kind of havoc's going on with that, and it popped the strap shut or partially shut on a spark plug. You wouldn't have known the car had a misfire after that, because just driving the thing around, no misfire, no issue, and then you get on it in the car, and that's when the misfire starts to come up. So, that's a teardown right there. But just check them just to be on the safe side. But more than likely, you'll be fine. Jerry 32, I was just going to say that Hellcat at SRT4. Man, I love SRT4s. We present to you the new SRT4 Hellcat. What would be hysterical is if it were a 4-cylinder with a root supercharger and just really screw everybody's mind up. Cody Boston saying the SRT4 Neon, the SRT4 Caliber are pretty darn fast, just were marketed badly and never got the recognition. And then Phoenix is saying, Hellcat the world, son. Yeah, you know, the funny thing is that if you were in the know at the time, the SRT4 was a pretty sick little car, man. Again, I've had more fun than you should ever be allowed to have in an SRT4 on an autocross. Really, it was the infield of the old Texas World, but I've had so much fun with those cars. And again, I've got this little like schoolgirl crush on those things, along with the GLH and the Daytona, and all as a 600 turbo. So front wheel drive Dodge, you know, a little coupe. I love that thing, and I just wish it wasn't. Anyway, getting back to it, the old SRT4, man, it never really got the love that it should have. You know, it was built on a neon platform, which, you know, for some reason was maligned. I thought it was great, but you know, it all of that doesn't take away from the fact that the things will freaking scream. I have seen SRT4s on the highway take out heads cam intake vets without a problem, like just walk away from them. So as well as I've seen Civics do the same thing. So anyway, it goes without saying, they're a lot of fun. Levi's saying, thanks for the knowledge, man. You got it. Scott's checking and saying, what up, mates? What's up? Tonight, guys, is you know, just talking Mopar stuff in general, and again, you know, recap, let you guys know what to expect, what's coming, what's going to be on the channel coming up. And so, in chronological order, the way that it is probably going to go is going to be Blue Truck, the GMC, getting over to Dr. Diff's shop. And again, it's going to get a performer intake manifold on it because it's got the 2-barrel, and we can't have that. So it'll get an intake manifold and just an Edelbrock carburetor, used stuff off of a buddy of his car. It'll get that, the leaf springs installed because I don't have a cutting torch, and it's going to take a cutting torch to get those leaves off of there. Because at some point that truck was, I don't even know what to tell you. Somebody worked on it that shouldn't have, and they kind of hacked it together. Anyway, it's in the works. But between that and the transmission, obviously the transmission is kaput in that truck. That'll be the first thing. Along with that, the Fox body is going to be getting the Fluidine 3-core radiator, which is the radiator that came out of it. That radiator is probably 15 years old. It just like with anything, if you let these things sit for any length of time, this is an aluminum radiator, and things become acidic. And of course, acid, it eats metal. That's the thing that it loves to do more than anything. And so it developed a lot of pinholes. And so obviously that's got to get fixed. I say that they couldn't fix it. But that, along with the seat mount, needs to be fixed. So be looking for that, along with, you know, correcting the paint on it. I'll be running that freaking orbital on that thing for forever to get it shiny, but been perfecting my skills on the truck, so that's a cool thing. But we'll see how far my skills can take it, and then I may have to turn the reins over to a pro, because, you know, I am skill set deficit when it comes to that kind of shit. I can get it close, but to get it over the top is going to take something else. And then from there, the Camaro. I'd like to get the Camaro moving forward, though, coming into this year, mainly because I just like driving that thing. There's something to be said for the old TBI all block, and they don't make a lot of horsepower, but damn, what they do so well is that tip-in torque, man. That tip-in, like right now, torque, that if you're just cruising and you go boop with the throttle, you just kind of feel it, you know. No downshifting because it's a 4-speed automatic. And no downshifting because There's no RPM to be had. That thing is done by 4,000 RPM, which is fine. Anyway, I just like that kind of stuff. You know, I like a change of pace. I like a change of scenery every once in a while. And the Hellcat's a lot of fun, but the Hellcat's fast, and you expect it to be fast. When something is slow and it does something fun, that's when it's like, oh, that was kind of neat. You know, like the Camaro lighting the tires up from a stop or something like that. It's like, this car's not supposed to do that, but it does, and it did. It's like, oh, how cute, you know? Anyway, plus it's kind of a nostalgic thing for me, so I like that. But, oh, the steering is the other thing that's got to get done to that car. And then from there, it's going to be, you know, paint needs to be fixed. I mean, there ain't no correcting it. It just needs to be repainted. So there's a lot going on there too. Cody's asking, what are the reasons for them discontinuing the Caliber and the Neon? A couple of things. One, are safety was a big part of that. The other thing is the buying public just wasn't really going for those cars as much, and I think they figured that that platform had been taken as far as it could possibly go. It's tough to say, but I mean, they kind of tried to with the Dart, right? I mean, think back to the Dart. The Dart was actually a neat little car, and I think they even had an SRT version of it. It's just poor marketing. That's the main thing. They just didn't really drive it. Here's the thing that bugged me the most about that. That was a huge missed opportunity. And I'm still a little bit pissed off about that. So let's talk about that. My thoughts on the Dart. I haven't done a My Thoughts video in ages. Maybe I need to do one on the Dart. Well, really, I can't do one on the Dart because it was never the car that I wanted it to be. The thing is that the Dart could have been a direct line of sight challenger to the ST, to the GTI, to any of the hot hatch types of cars. Take the best parts of the SRT4 and just kind of homologate that into the Dart, something that is just going to be a back alley brawler in that basically in that market segment. And they didn't do that. They kind of made some compromises with that car that just did not allow it to be extra enough to go up against the likes of the competition I just mentioned. So, you know, I was really bummed out about that. But again, if you look at Mopar, if you look at FCA's MO, I just didn't think that they would get there. I don't think they had enough confidence to think that they could get there from where they were already. Had I been, hi, FCA, my name's Brian Mason. I think I can do you a whole lot of good in your marketing department and in your product development lines. Feel free to DM me in my Instagram. Look, here's the thing. Had they gone about the Dart the way that I was hoping they were going to go about the Dart, we would still have the Dart, and it would be a nasty ass little car. In one of two ways. One, you make it a front engine. Make it a front-wheel drive, 4-door, if you will, 2-door if you like, but it doesn't matter. Hot hatch type of a platform, something that goes up against the GTI or the ST, whatever. This used to be Dodge's wheelhouse, y'all. GLH, Daytona. These were cars that were going up against Camaros and Mustangs of their era in the 80s and showing them their taillights in many situations. You know, guys say, it's front wheel drive, you can't listen. That don't matter. When you start hot rodding these things, they take on route. Or the Dart could have been your new Miata. The Dart could have been the new F86 or whatever. But use that as the platform to kick off something that gets really good fuel economy, that's really fun to drive. And I get it with the V8s and the superchargers and the power. That's fun and that's marketable. But look at where the F86 from Toyota has come Look at how strong of a performer that thing is just in general. I mean, it's Toyota's Miata, basically, is what it is, right? That would have been a great opportunity for them, and they just didn't. And I don't know, to me, how cool would it have been to have a Dart that went up against Europeans' finest hot hatches and then reintroduce that and have a third or fourth party to, I don't know all the hot hatches that are out there, I don't keep up with them, but bring back a GLH type of a car, bring back the Dart Daytona. They spin names around all the time. The Dart GLH. Come back a little bit of that Shelby reference. That would have been super cool, because not only are you calling upon your past, but you're bringing in something that's not only fast but fuel efficient. There's just so many cool directions they could have taken that car, and they just didn't go that way. So, again, FCA, look me up. Zephyr's asking, B, if you have a soft spot for an SRT4 or other fun raw cars yet maybe not as cool, why not switch it up? The Hellcat is cool, but so is all the aforementioned. It's funny you bring that up, because I was having a very similar, this is like a topic for its own video, to be honest with you, man. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and this is where the topic kind of went, was what would I get rid of the Hellcat for? And, I got to thinking about it. I really like the Hellcat a lot. But it takes up a lot of real estate in the garage. Like, literally, it's freaking huge. These cars are monsters. But what would I do instead of the Hellcat? And I was thinking, well, if I got rid of it, I could, build a hell of a GLH. I could go old school, go that route, go real funky and build just a nasty Daytona. Or if I wanted to go super old school and bring back some nostalgia for me personally, build a Conquest or a Starion. That would be sick to death, right? And try not to do try to step away from the temptation to go LS swap, right? But there's nothing that the older cars do for me, and keeping in mind that I'm amassing this small, there's nothing that they do for me that is wholesale better than what this Hellcat does for me. And again, the Hellcat for me represents, it's like having all of my favorite cars that I've ever even owned or driven or worked on or what have you. It's like having all of those vehicles all in one with my Hellcat, with the big exception being that it's not a manual transmission. And I will admit that I miss driving a manual transmission at times. But as good as this automatic is, and the fact that it's, I've got a manual mode. I've got a couple of different manual modes, really, if you count the console shifter and the paddles. But when you think about it, there's not a car, and I'm not trying to beat around the bush, I'm just kind of basically taking on a journey with how my mind was working. There's not a car out there that does everything that the Hellcat does and offer a true manual transmission that I could really see myself falling in love with. Except for one, and it's a vehicle that you might not think right off the bat. And you might say, oh, the Supra, you've talked about the Supra. Yeah, but they don't offer a manual transmission with that. And you could say, oh, well, what about, like a Mustang, one of the newer Mustangs? Yeah, not really like the new Mach 1. Yeah, but, I just wouldn't go from, I'm just not there to go from Hellcat to Mach 1. And if I did go Mach 1, it'd be a great car. But actually, the one vehicle that I thought of was the one that I probably wouldn't buy anyway, but the one that got my attention, that does a lot of neat stuff and is a manual, be the new Bronco. I mean, think about it. The 2.7 liter, throw some tunage at it. Manual transmission, says 7-speed with a granny gear first. It's got a low range. That thing would be a shitload of fun. And, you know, bump it up to about 350 horsepower, 450 pound-feet of torque. Manual transmission. I mean, what's not to love at that point, right? It's a smaller vehicle, so you know it's not like you need a lot of power. It would be a lot of fun, and you could do stuff with it. Take it off-road. It's kind of its MO, right? So those are some of the things I was thinking about. You know, there's a certain thing that you miss if you're just used to driving a manual transmission car. It's just entertaining to do, especially when you consider that it's a skill set. So developing that skill set and maintaining that skill set is a lot of fun. So, you know, you lose that interaction with the car at that point, or the vehicle, I should say, at that point. It could be anything. But, you know, I've thought about mixing it up, and every time I think about mixing it up, I think of how the Hellcat is just a melting pot of so many cars that I've liked, that the Hellcat is the mix-up. The Hellcat is that gumbo of all the things that I've always loved about all the cars that I've ever even, you know, driven, dynoed, wanted, whatever. This thing has all of that. So, I don't know. The search continues, but not necessarily an active search. Just more along the lines of they're kind of cool. Let's see. Donald's asking, hey B, how much can you deck the heads on a 392 stock piston, intake lift, 590-ish, 570 lift, exhaust? Great info, thanks. You don't have to. Well, if you're talking about decking the heads on a 392, or decking the heads on stock piston intake. Okay, if you're just doing really want to go much more than that, because what happens is you run into you can start to run into a geometry issue with how the intake fits on the heads. Remember that the heads intake ports are flat, right? But the block is not flat; it's a V. So the heads will start to scoot, or the heads will be in, so your ports are going to be a little bit in, which means, but you've got a fixed intake manifold, and there's no way to like cut the intake manifold in half and bring it together. So I wouldn't cut them that much, but you know, 10 or 12 thousandths I don't think would make that big of a difference to them, and you can run a 590, 570 cam with no problems on that setup. So I'd say go for it. I mean, if you're just doing a cleanup deck, but you know, while the thing's apart, you can probably do something with the valves. Valve job for sure will help you out quite a bit in terms of picking up some flow. But no, you're in good shape, man. Cody's asking, I was going to say, because now the Calibur are starting to show up a lot more now, when back then there wasn't a lot around. A lot of folks are getting real nostalgic for those cars. I've seen quite a few of them. I mean, clean, nice looking examples of those cars popping up here lately. Man, people just, we're getting to the point now where the 2000s, the early 2000s, late 90s are a nostalgic period for people of a certain age, so to speak. This guy, for example. The stuff from 20 years ago, you weren't as encumbered by the weight of all the different just nannies and, well, nannies are electronics, but I mean, you didn't have all of the safety gizmos and gadgets, all of the infotainment stuff, all of this stuff that makes a modern car, you just didn't have to deal with back in the day. And the cars were lighter, you were just more connected with the car. They probably weren't as safe as they are now, but you know, I mean, it's a trade-off, right? But all the cars were lighter, and you felt more connected to the car. The driving experience completely different, and I mean, let's be honest, you're working with, you're still working with 6-speed manual transmissions, 6-speed automatics coming from that time era. So you've got a more modern driving experience than you ever would from something from the early 90s or the 80s for that matter. You're going to have a better driving experience, more performance, but performance because the vehicles were lighter, not because they were making much more power. And, you're going to start seeing them pop up more and more as the years go on. And then Phoenix is saying the modern tech is nice, but the analog driving experience is that's exactly what I was just talking about. It's what's lacking in the market. Old school rides are still cool. Yeah, they are. And then Cody's saying, I feel the new Dart has a lot to live up to because the Dart name and how nasty the Dart Superstock was back in the day. And again, that's another marketing just... Think of what you could have done. Think of what could have been done. It's just... There's a certain, what were you thinking going on here with that? It's a certain level of confusion that I have when we start talking about using these storied names with these cars and yet not putting any substance behind them. For the casual car fan, I mean, for somebody who doesn't really care, they'll just know it as if they even remember it, it'll be a footnote. But, to those of us that have a special place in our hearts for vehicles like that, we're just bummed because we know how much better the brand would have been, how much stronger the brand would have been in the marketplace had they done something along those lines with those vehicles. But not everybody's looking for sporty. Some people just want a thing to get them from point A to point B. No problem. You can do that with that small platform just as easily. So I don't see where the fear factor was with them in terms of making the thing good. Anyway, just my O2 on that. Zephyr's saying the 86 is better than an ND Miata. I wrote the check. Very nice. Then Mazda had to honestly write me a check. Oh, damn. Oh, that's right. Yeah, you got limit lot on that one. Eesh. That sucks. T saying, be an interesting Hellcat build to look into over the next couple of weeks is Mod to Fame's decision to twin turbocharge his Hellcat Challenger. He announced it on Instagram a couple of days ago. So to that point, there's been a couple of turbo builds up at the shop. I have not been keeping up with them because I've seen how the turbo is set up in some of these new kits. It sets the turbo up right about there, if you can picture that just being roughly in the middle of the car. Kind of a cringy spot to put turbos, but you can definitely make some power with them. And I'll take a look at it. I mean, I'd like to see how he does with that. In terms of making power, it'll certainly make power. And in terms of being just kind of the cool factor of having something a little bit different, I'd say go for it. I mean, it reminds me of when people were putting turbos on Lightnings back in the day. They pulled that Eaton supercharger off, I guess they were putting truck intake manifolds on them and putting turbos on them. Basically picking up 120 horsepower. So I think it'd be neat to see what they do with it. Except for RD saying B, winner of the next Radwood. I don't know. Aston? Maybe. We'll see. Let's see. Queasy saying, you brought up a good point. I've only driven more nimble cars in my 06 Mustang, now being my biggest. The Challenger would take some time to get used to size-wise. It kind of does. Zephyr saying, Bronco would be sweet. I pray it would be a two-door. I'm a lifelong Wrangler guy, but I grew up around tons of K5s and Broncos, but I'm not quite a fan of the turbo motor outside of diesel on the trail. Yeah, is the 2.7's pretty cool in that it spools up so quickly. You know, and for me, I'm just looking to see how much of a rooster tail I can send out the back of the thing. So there's that as far as that goes. But you know, as far as being something that would be cool and fun to play with, yeah, I mean, a two-door Bronco would be right up my alley. I mean, my wife's got the Jeep, and thing's a lot of fun, man. I love Jeeps. I love, you know, Broncos. I like the idea of the Bronco, I think, more than anything else. And let me stop right there and just elaborate on that point. A lot of times when you start to look at these newer vehicles, it's not really a question of is the vehicle idea of the Bronco, but is the size right? Is the power to weight going to be right? Is it going to be punchy? Is it going to be darty enough? What's the drive really going to be like with that vehicle under all conditions? You know, what's it going to act like on the street? What's it going to act like in the dirt? All of these things are going to be important to note. And if you find that the Bronco is just something that, you know, just the pictures of it, and you really get wrapped up in it, and you fall in love with it, I'm curious to hear what y'all's impression is going to be of it. I haven't seen one yet, but when they do start hitting dealerships, I'm going to be checking them out. Not because I'm necessarily falling over myself to buy one, but I just want to see what they've done with it. I want to drive one. I want to find out what the driving experience is really going to be like with this new Bronco. Because I have a feeling that if it's even 50% of what I'm thinking it's going to be like, that thing is going to be a riot. And of course, it's a Ford, so you've got potential, right? But here's the other thing. Have you priced one out yet? When you get a chance, get a couple of tabs going. Look at the Jeep pricing and then look at the Bronco pricing. You're going to be a little bit shocked as far as how much less expensive, or maybe you won't be, how much less expensive the Bronco is than the Jeep. And I get it, it's based off the Wrangler platform and all that, I understand that, but still, you're getting a lot of styling and a lot of pub in the Bronco for less money. Two-door, four-door looks great too, by the way. But you're getting a lot for the cash that you're potentially going to lay out. So I would keep that in the back of your mind when you're thinking about that Bronco. Let's see. And I understand about the turbo on a trail, but again, it's as snappy as those Fords are. I don't know that you'd know that it's a difference. Scat P saying shaker hood or SRT hood on a Scat Pack, which would you go with? I'm thinking of upgrading my hood. I've had an SRT that's got kind of an SRT hood on it too. If it's me, I would go with a Hellcat hood. And if you're going to get the shaker, make sure you get everything to make the shaker functional. If you don't get the shaker, the functionality of the shaker, you know, I would, you know, it's really not going to do you a whole lot of good. Like I say, I'd go with a Hellcat style hood because it's still SRT, but it has the heat extractors, which I think help. And then Cody Bass is saying 4-cylinders have piqued my interest for a while, trying to branch off from my family since they're mostly V8s. Crazy how much power they can really hold. Look, man, for the most part, the 4-cylinders are only there to act as, you know, a life support system for a turbocharger, especially from back in the day. So, yeah, I mean, different stuff gets my attention. You know, V8s are cool. Everybody loves the way that they sound because you're conditioned to love the way that they sound. There's so much about the V8 that's great, but the problem is my imagination. And, you know, a lot of it is 4-cylinder. A lot of it really is just what all can they do with these cars nowadays. But, you know, inline 6-cylinder, big fan of that, especially when boost is involved. Super really gets my blood flowing. I mean, I love the new Supra. I've got a thing for the new Supra. But look at the 2-liter. The 2-liter turbo is pretty quick too. But just all the stuff that's out now, I think it's a great time. I wish the pricing wasn't so expensive. But anyway, such is life. But guys, we are coming up at almost 2.5 hours. I want to thank each and every one of you guys for hanging out with me tonight. Thank you all very much for contributing to the channel. Appreciate it. That support keeps me motivated and rocking and rolling. Be on the lookout for the content on the 72 truck, the 72 GMC, the 89 Mustang, and on the 92 Camaro. We check out with Zephyr and Scat Speed, and I'll be out here. Zephyr saying an Instagram buddy of mine was out on the Rubicon and seeing Broncos out there, was mentioned that the independent rear suspension didn't like getting hung both up, yeah. But Bronco would kill it in the dunes. Yeah, I can see that. It's really not a trail rig from what I can tell. And this guy's been saying shaker hood is around $3,000. SRT hood with TA Ram Air is $1,700. I think that tells you where I would go with that. But anyway, guys, I'm going to check out. Again, thank you all very much for hanging out. It's independent front suspension. And yes, he just caught it. Zephyr just sent it over because it's a solid rear axle. Stay safe out there, guys. Keep wearing your mask, if not for yourself, then for others. God bless. Love all of y'all. See you guys on the next one. That's a wrap. Adios.